Welcome to Turn Talks, the podcast that bridges the gaps between college and career. Join your host, Tina Fox, founder of Turn Mentoring, as she brings together corporate leaders, educators, and university alumni to share practical wisdom and equip you with confidence, clarity, and connection.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Turn Talks. I am Tina Fox. I'm the founder and CEO of Turn Mentoring. And Turn Talks is our podcast where we get to interview some of the most amazing student mentees, as well as amazing leaders, mentors, and alumni who have already taken that route from collegiate to career. And they have created some amazing things in their work on the other side of what I like to call the snow globe. So today I have a wonderful guest by the name of Katherine Touhey. She is a new friend to me because we were introduced in a way that was very powerful. It had to do a lot with self-work. And so I'm going to introduce Katherine really quick and welcome her to the show, just so you have a background on her. Katherine is a CP of Certified Enneagram Coach who is based in Alexandria, Virginia. If those of you who don't know the Enneagram, that's okay. We're going to talk about that on this show. Katherine helps individuals and teams use the Enneagram as a powerful model for growth and personal transformation. She's trained by two of the world's leading Enneagram teachers, Beatrice Chestnut and Uranio Paez. Katherine brings both deep expertise and lived experience to her work. She is a type 3, which we all know is an achiever, and she knows firsthand the power of turning inward and to discover what's truly possible. So welcome, Katherine, you 3U.
Oh, thanks for having me, Tina.
So I wanted to kick off the show to let all the listeners know how we met and then kind of get into what this Enneagram thing is all about. Because when I ask people if they know what the Enneagram is, they say no.
Right.
So we're going to get into that. And then I want to get into your story a little bit. But so how did we meet? So Katherine is doing some work with a company that I'm connected with. And in that work, she and I needed to sit down and talk about my test results as it pertained to this Enneagram, which is a personality type profile test. And so in our discussion, it just became this fascinating conversation about self-work and what the Enneagram has meant to us and how we were both introduced to it in the first place. Katherine is someone who I have found conversation with her has been so deep and insightful. And I asked her if she would pretty please come on this podcast to share what it is that she knows, because one of the things we study at Turn Mentoring is self-awareness. And this is between our mentors and mentees. And the mentees have a chance to look towards their mentors as a different lens and gain a different perspective. And so, Katherine, can you just give us a little bit about your background in Enneagram and tell the whole audience what Enneagram is all about? You're going to do a much better job than me.
Of course, yes. So I have always been a seeker. I've always been interested in human growth and development and what is out there in the bigger world and how us humans interact and live to our fullest, most lively self. It's interesting because I had someone ask me the other day, like, when were you first introduced to this? And so I thought back, and it was actually in ninth grade. We were required to take a full year human growth and development class as part of our graduation requirements for high school.
Oh,
And
wow.
when you go back to that, you're like, what did you love as a kid? Like, what did you? And when I go back, it was that I loved every aspect of that class. I love learning about attachment theory and Piaget and like all of the different phases of human growth and development. And it kind of sat on the back burner.
Mm.
And I went to college, I did the things, I did all the things that I thought I was supposed to do and check all these boxes, all the while on the side, my side little thing was a seeker, yoga teacher training, meditation, breath work, retreats, like going internal deeper. And I always loved those experiences. And nothing ever quite clicked. Like it was good enough. It was like a good breadcrumb, a good nice nugget, a good unlocking, but nothing was ever like, this is it. This is it that makes sense for me until COVID. Isn't that like everyone's experience? Oh, COVID. And then this happened until
It
COVID.
is
My
tough. COVID
family,
was the great mandatory surrender. We have no.
I I'm so thankful for COVID for a variety of reasons. I mean, I get it. I was in a very fortunate situation, but for me and my family, it was a gift. So during COVID, my husband left corporate. He had been career corporate, same company for 20 years, and he left. And he started working with an executive coach that specialized in entrepreneurs. And the foundation of his coaching was Enneagram. I'd never heard of this. And we received my husband's report. Sometimes you can get a report. And I looked at him and I said, please tell me you see this, because this is what I see. And it was put in a language and a foundation that didn't come across as judgmental, didn't come across as criticism. It really gave him and me, as a result, the clearest picture and description of him that either of us had ever experienced. And so immediately I was like, I want in. I want to know more about myself. And so I did a typing interview. I got a report back, and it clicked enough. The initial type that the person gave me, it clicked enough.
Okay.
But I think what was beautiful for us during that time was, I call it the third point. It was my husband and his type, and it was me and my type. And then we were given this thing called the Enneagram to work with it. And it's this outside thing that we could begin to discuss. So it wasn't me like giving him a hard time because of his tendencies, or him not understanding. We could pull it out and say, hey, let's look at it through this different lens.
Mm-hmm.
And I just took a deep dive. I went into a 2-year course, a deep study, became certified. And now I call it, I drink the Kool-Aid. I'm obsessed. I see the Enneagram everywhere. I live it. I breathe it. And it's
So
just been such a life changer.
talk about the Enneagram as it pertained to, I mentioned earlier that it is and I, since you're the expert, I hate to
Yeah.
say personality profile test, because you're probably like, no, it's so much more. But for all of us lay people out there, I call it a personality profile test because I've taken DISC, I've taken Myers-Briggs, I've taken Clifton Strength Finders, What Color's Your Parachute, all these different types of personality profile tests out there. And one of the things that I always tell the students that I work with is, if you are given the opportunity to take these, it's not a bad idea to take them. It doesn't hurt, right? You don't have to give blood. So let's just go ahead and take these things, and don't look at them as personality profile tests as though this is who you are, there's everything about you for eternity. I ask them to take a look at those things and find the words that speak to them to help them as descriptors when they are going for interviews or internships. Because, to say, oh, I want to get into sales because I'm a people person, that's not very descriptive, right? But if you can talk about how you connect with people and where on these different tests you show up, that gives the interviewer an opportunity to understand you more. So how would
Yeah.
you describe the Enneagram without having, because it's thick, without having to go into, that's why you took a 2-year course, without having to go into all the details of the
Yep.
Enneagram, how would you describe the Enneagram in comparison to those other personality profile tests that I mentioned and people are probably more familiar with?
Yeah. So a DISC assessment, a Myers-Briggs, those are great. And they're going to tell you behaviors, and they're going to tell you what I call, if you can imagine an iceberg, the tip of the iceberg, everything that everyone sees on the outside. The Enneagram will name that. And the Enneagram is it's a circle with 9 types. So it's 9 archetypes, 9 different profiles, 9 different personalities. And the biggest difference between the Enneagram and one of those other modalities is the Enneagram really gets to the motivation. What motivates those behaviors that people observe? Like I said with my husband, I could observe these behaviors. I didn't understand them, and I didn't know what was driving them.
Mm.
So the Enneagram gets to those underlying motivators. And so it's everything, if you're imagining that iceberg, everything below the surface, your internal experience that's driving outward behavior. And the difference, another main difference between the Enneagram and another one of those assessments, is it gives you a map, and it gives you a road, a guide to how to understand and then live beyond. So it's like living in a glass box that you never knew you lived in. And the Enneagram blows that open and says, this is where you could go. this is where you are as your type. And we're going to open your world up to 9 other types, 9 other ways of seeing the world, 9 other ways of being motivated. Well, I will add, the Enneagram is one of the unique tests or one of the unique modalities where you type yourself. You, at the end of the day, you determine your type. No test can tell you your type. No Enneagram expert, no guide can tell you your type. You live your lived experience. And so you self-disclose, you choose, you decide, you determine what's true for you.
Yeah. And that kind of blew the cap off of things for me is when we started going through the Enneagram, Katherine said to me, I know you've always typed as, a 3 with a 2 wing, but there's this 8. And I was just joking with my husband like the day before about you're not supposed to type young people, right? Like really you need to type as an adult. Is that correct? So you shouldn't be
You
giving
need
this to like 12-year-olds.
No. I joke with because this comes up a lot in the Enneagram community of like, when can you start typing? And my teacher will joke, well, if they're understanding TikTok videos, then they can begin to type themselves. But you do need enough lived experience for the personality to stick.
Okay.
And so you do need to have some, gone through some adversity, navigated some challenges to begin to really understand what that process looks like of how you overcame it.
Well, and I do know some young people who I feel like have lived 1,000 lives because they have had a lot of adversity and they've come through with tremendous resilience. So I guess that's why there was no number as to what age. It's like you said, it's the lived experience. But yeah, we were joking because we have not, my husband and I did not take our kids through the Enneagram test. We felt like they were still too young. They haven't had that lived experience.
Yeah.
So we were joking about my youngest son and we were like, oh, maybe he's an 8. And for those people who don't know what each one of the numbers represent, the 8 represents the challenger. So you can imagine we have a teenage boy. So there it is, right? And and we were laughing about it a little bit. And then when I got on the call with you a day or two later, and you said, no, it seems like you might be an 8. Have you ever considered that? And then I remember going back to my son and saying, hey, I want you to know we were kind of talking behind your back, but here it is. I'm going to tell you now. And then Katherine ended up telling me I might be an 8. And he's so clever. He looks at me and goes, well, I guess, Mom, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree now, does it? I said, maybe
Yeah.
not. Maybe not. So, okay. So you've given us a context of where the Enneagram lies in conjunction with other personality profile tests. All very useful, all very helpful. Anything else that, we should know as it pertains to this Enneagram and how it could help people by taking it? And what is your role in that as, somebody who works with people in the Enneagram?
Yeah. So there are a ton of resources out there, and there's books and there's various tests. And I would say take any test with a grain of salt. The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Don Russo and Russ Hudson is a fantastic book, as well as The Guide to Wit by Beatrice Chestnut and Aranio Pius, who are my teachers. It's a great beginner's guide. And they have throughout the book a couple of like checklists to begin to see like, oh, could I be this type? And I will say, like, if you do an online test, take all those results with a grain of salt and just try it. Just live it into it. So if you test a couple of different types, just begin to like, do I show up as the helper? Do I show up with an agenda where I want to achieve certain things? Am I more withdrawn into my emotions? Am I a seeker of various experiences? Do I play the mediator, which would be a type 9? Can I see all sides of an issue, but maybe not speak to my opinion of it as loudly as being able to manage everyone else's opinions? And so, like, as you begin in the past type, does it feel true to you? And if it doesn't, then maybe you explore another type, or one lands right away. And that happens too. And then just begin as a guide. I'm here to help you on that path, to help you begin to understand the language, to begin to understand the foundation of it, to begin to understand what it means to live that type, but as well as like nuggets that would maybe challenge and push you, or to be the mirror to be like, is that true? Is the story of being a 3 that you experienced, is that true? And how true is that?
Okay. So talk to people about what the experience of the test is like, because those of us that have not taken the test, we should probably, where do you get this? How long does it take?
Yeah.
What types of questions are they asking? What should they expect?
Yeah. So there are a variety of tests out there. Some are free, some are paid. You could take a very basic one like Truity, and Truity does a really good job of giving you like 3 different ones to explore. You could take a Ready test, which is RHETI, which is Russ Hudson's test, which I think that's a low cost one. That's $12. And really what it's going to ask you is the same question, but from different perspectives to see where you land and to see which type you might be answering the most questions from. But this is where I say a test isn't going to truly reveal your inner experience. It's going to give you a snapshot and it's going to give you a starting point. And the Enneagram really wants you to look at your life as a whole, not situationally. I work with a lot of moms who fall into type 2 as a helper, but that's their role as being the mom, meeting the needs of little kids. That isn't who they are given the context of their entire life.
Hmm.
And actually, when you bring it back to colleges and being a college student, that is probably the healthiest time that you are living into your personality. Your personality is being mirrored. You're making decisions and choices on your own for the first time. You have a sense of autonomy. So it's really a time where your personality can shine. And so that's a beautiful time to begin to explore your Enneagram type because you get to try it on where the stakes are really low.
I had never considered that, but that you have a very valid point in that. So, for the students, I just want to remind you that what Katherine just said is because they're thinking, I don't even have 2 nickels to rub together, Tina. You know how much college is? So you can get it for free. Okay. You can take the Enneagram test online for free. And how long are these tests typically, even the free ones?
20 minutes at the most.
Okay. So at least give yourself, I mean, don't be in a rush to take this test. Give yourself time to be in a space where you can be calm, not a lot of noise, not at a party, and you can take this test so that you can be thoughtful in your responses and hopefully get a pretty decent response back. So it can start with free. What's the difference between some of the free ones and the paid ones?
The free ones will just give you a snapshot. Some of the paid ones will give you a more deeper report. But that's where I say there are so many resources out there, so many great websites. CP Enneagram is a great website. Narrative Enneagram is a great website. Russ Hudson has great material. I mean, heck, there's a ton of people I follow on Instagram that are just putting out amazing material of what the different types look like, which is another way to begin to see yourself.
So you can touch in on the cheap, but
Yes.
at the same time, the journey is long and
Yes.
we have an opportunity to upscale so long as you are interested in going and doing deeper work in knowing thyself. And, at this stage of my life, part of the reason why I'm partnered with Katherine to do my own work is because, I want to show up as my authentic self. Because I want that level of vibration in this world and to be able to connect with you and have open conversations about, well, how do you feel about this? And where does that impact you? And, how does this rub you the wrong way? It's really been a wonderful conversation. And it's just for me, I think it's a higher level conversation. I mean, I could talk about the weather. We could talk about a lot of things, but you and there's never a loss of words for,
Yeah.
the self discovery. So,
And I will say a lot of the experience that I just described, taking the test, beginning to learn the 9 types, that's going to stay surface level.
yeah,
And your personality will serve you until it doesn't. And that's where I think a lot of the people that we're working with in like leadership positions or when you're in relationships that become challenging, like that's when this deeper work of exploring why am I showing up the way I am? Why are they showing up the way they are? And how do I begin to unpack it? That's really where the depth and the beauty of the Enneagram comes to light.
I love it. I love it. So, let's go back because you are a graduate of somewhere. And
Yeah.
when I found out where you graduated from, the funny thing is, as being an East Coaster most of my life, I know the school names, and sometimes if you say James Madison University, it's just JMU to those of us that went there, right? Or go Dukes. If you're the University of Connecticut, we just say UConn. But then as I get a little bit further west and I'm working with more and more universities going that way, I realize we have different names. So you went to, I'm going to say the whole name.
The whole
And then
name.
you tell me, like, for those of you that went there. So the University of California at Berkeley is where you went to school, completely other side of the world from here. And you were a collegiate athlete. So tell us about the younger Catherine Touhey. Tell us about
Yeah.
your
So younger Catherine too, it was very aspirational. I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, so Northern Virginia. And Northern Virginia is a hotbed for swimming. And we have a lot of amazing swimmers that come out of this area. And I just happened to, from a very young age, excel at swimming and was
What's your
labeled
swim
for.
team? What was your swim team?
Okay. So I grew up swimming at Army Navy Country Club. And, like a lot of us, we grew up in Summerlee where it's fun all the time. The swimming is just fun.
Got to give a shout out to the OG. Okay, so
There you go. So that's where it started. That's where I learned how to I learned how to swim in my grandparents' backyard. They had a pool.
okay.
So that's where it officially started. But yes, I had success as a very young kid. And then in the Northern Virginia area, there's a lot of opportunity to swim for a club team. And so that's where swimming then becomes a year-round sport. And you get thrown into this larger thing called US swimming. And my career quickly progressed from there. And all the while, I'm doing all the things, playing soccer, going skiing, playing tennis and golf and flag football with my friends and, touch football back in the day. We did not have flag football. It was touch football. Sometimes, boys would get aggressive and tackle. But all the while of this, I was always swam. And so my career progressed to the point where my junior and senior year, I started figuring out what would be next steps and what would it be to compete in college and at what level did I want to compete. And I was competing nationally at that point. And so I really aspired to go to a D1 school and go to a top 15 school and really kind of see where my career could continue to take me. And so I explored a lot of different options. I explored the Naval Academy. I explored Princeton. I explored UVA and Southern Methodist. And then I had the opportunity to go on a recruiting trip to California. And that sold it right there. And my parents could not understand for the life of them why I would want to go to school 3,000 miles away.
They're like UVA is right down the road and it's in-state rates. And why are we going? Yeah, I get that.
And so it got to the point where I was trying to figure out what I was going to major in because I didn't have the hindsight to go back to my 9th grade year in high school and be like, that's really what I want to study. And I had the opportunity to design my own major. So interdisciplinary studies. And I took, my Cal education. I took this really cool class on Islamic studies.
Hmm.
And it really opened my eyes up to kind of the Cold War and US foreign policy during that time and what the US relationships with Iran and the Middle East. And so I ended up designing my own major and doing a deep dive into US foreign policy during the Cold War and writing a thesis and took a class with Ayatollah Khomeini's godson, which
Wow.
only in a Berkeley education could you do and experience. So a total shift from what I initially thought I would ever study. But I took advantage of the opportunity at Cal to really learn I took a class from Ralph Nader's sister and on groupthink and really kind of went all in on the Cal experience.
That's really cool. You're the first person I've talked to that decided to study that. And interdisciplinary studies, although it's now seems to be more broad-based, back then it sounds like that was very California. Like you get to pick your own, you get to pick your own, design your own. So, which I think is wonderful. Now that you have the hindsight that you have, what would you have studied?
Psychology, kinesiology, more of the lived human experience. Yeah.
Okay, so bring that forward. You end up leaving school and you had a life after school. So catch us up between your life after school and how you ended up getting into the Enneagram. And what did the Enneagram result for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So being 3,000 miles away from home was not the easiest for me. So as I graduated and I came back east, I needed some time at home. Because going that far away, I didn't have the luxury of just coming home on a weekend.
Sure.
So I kind of made up for that time. And then I had aspirations to work for like a think tank and work in the Pentagon, and it didn't feel right. And I always loved athletics. And so I ended up working for Georgetown in the athletic department, Georgetown University in their athletic department, and working in day-to-day ops and ticketing and with their fundraisers and the booster program. And I loved that. I loved sport and event management and being still in that athletic world and working with athletes and working with people that love athletics and support sports. So I did that and then progressed and actually worked for a sports agency in their event marketing, event productions side of it. So did fundraising events with Andy Roddick and a lot of tennis events and worked with some professionals there and like Andre Agassi. And I loved that. And I always loved, but it was still the human experience part of it, like working with these well-renowned, amazing athletes, but at the same time, like knowing that they were human and they were dealing with human things just on this really big stage. And so it was always like piqued my interest. And then I got married and I had kids and my career switched and I taught PE for a little bit. So I was like, let me work with kids. And then our second child came and I stayed home with the boys. And then we had a third child and I stayed home with the boys. And so kind of hunkered down and little kids and was in that world while my husband did the corporate thing. But then the itch came back. It was like, what am I going to do next? And where is this going to take me? And in the Enneagram world, we like to say that the Enneagram finds you. You don't find it. It finds you when you're ready. And that's where I say, when I found this modality that finally stuck and really made sense to me, that's when I made the choice. Like, this is what I want to take out into the world. And I always say the Enneagram is a gift. And it's like, this is the gift that I want to be a conduit for.
Those are beautiful words. So we heard earlier that it was really your husband who brought this gift to your attention.
Yeah.
And you had forgotten that in ninth grade, it was there all along, but you started doing a deep dive into yourself. And what was the revelation in the deep dive for yourself? And if you want to share, what your number is and all of that, that would be great.
Yeah.
By the way, for those of us who talk Enneagram, there becomes this like a whole other fun little language, and you're like, oh, that's so three of you. And so we'll kind of do mini roasts of each other based on our number. So as somebody who had typed 3 with a 2 wing, I really understood you very well. But at the same time, I realized that maybe that was just a mask, and that I could really be a different number altogether, which feels more in line with the work that I'm doing right now. But talk about the revelations. You have this tool, you got this insight, and what came of that for you?
Yeah. So I had always thought of myself as highly motivated and driven and the ability to achieve, the ability to collect accolades in swimming, and the ability to compete at the highest levels and go to a D1 school, and then even afterwards continue to move towards excellence and to move towards just that idea of accomplishment. It really meant a lot to me. And as a type 3, we are considered the achievers. We achieve a lot of success. We don't show it, but we work really hard in the background. And I call it the duck effect, where calm, cool, collected on the top, but underneath you're flailing. And if that's a 3. We show up as easygoing and no big deal, but internally there is a huge drive to achieve and a huge drive to meet the next goal. And we're very aware of what that next goal is.
Mm-hmm.
And we will become very frustrated if someone gets in the way of us achieving that goal. And so that's where kind of, the impatience of the type can show. And once I began to unpack what achievement meant for me, and I began to look back and kind of see like, why was I doing some of the things that I was doing? Like, what was really underlying the motivation behind that? And some of it I can point to was like pure joy, pure just loving being in the experience of the hard work and the hard work paying off. And then there were other times where I could look back and be like, that was a checkbox and that was miserable. And I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. And so I can hold both. Like I can hold both when the personality really served me and then when the personality really let me down. And so now being able to understand the full scope of it, I have so much more clarity in the direction in which I'm going, so much more discernment about the choices that I'm making and what's meaningful. And then not only meaningful for me, but like meaningful for my family, because threes can be workaholics and we can become very transactional, which for a child, that does not work. They do not want transactional. They do not want workaholic mom. They want soft. They want surrender. They want presence. They want empathy. And so as a three, those are skills that I had to learn. And I say learn because they did not come naturally. That idea of slowing down did not come naturally. I expected my kids to work at the same pace I did.
I feel you on that. I actually have a little story. You just popped it back into the front of my head. I remember I was asking my one son, and he was very young. I think he was like 4 or 5. And I had said to him, "Hey, honey, mommy's checking in because a three, right? The achiever. Mommy's checking in to see what kind of a job I'm doing. And is there anything you would like to give me feedback on?" He's like, it's like a job interview. And this is the ridiculousness that is my life. And so, he's a very smart kid. And he just looked at me and he said, no, I don't think so. And I said, okay. And I'm not kidding. It was like 6 months later. And all of a sudden, he comes up to me out of the blue and he says, "Mommy, you remember when you asked me to give you some feedback?" And I said, "Yeah." And, it's like the world stops, right? And he says, "Okay, maybe you can tell me to do one thing at a time." And I was like, "Oh,
Sweet child.
yes." I was like, "Got it. Okay, so my, list of things," and you're, at this point, age 5.5, 6
Yeah.
maybe. I love the way that you describe, how you can hold both at the same time. You can be an achieving 3 and you can find the joy in that, but then you also were able to reflect upon the times where it was like, "This is not serving me, yet I can't help myself," and I probably wasn't showing up as my best self, but man, I was doing that duck paddle underneath and it was like, it's out there, so I need to go for it. How did that play out for you?
Yeah. So threes are very image conscious. And it's horrible to say, but you can kind of live through your resume. So if you can put D1, swimmer, all of those great things on your resume, but if that's what you're living through, then you put a lot of pressure on yourself to make sure that the walk you're walking shows up as exactly what you want. Well, internally, you could be struggling. And so that idea of I've worked so hard to reach this point that I've earned this, and threes will not admit failure. Failure, they fear failure. They do everything they can to make sure they avoid failure. So the idea that what I was working towards, and then when I'm there, that it's not working or that it's not serving me, or God forbid, I actually admit that I'm miserable, like a three grappling with that, like they're not going to want to admit that what they were working towards was the wrong decision. And so, and I go back to that workaholic piece because mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. And threes are really good at suppressing emotions. And emotions, you and I know, are the signals to say, ding, 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 something's up. You should listen. Hey, something's going on here. Can you please pay attention? And a three will go, no, 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 no. That's inefficient. No, 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 no. That doesn't serve me. No, 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 not right now. That will slow me down or affect my image.
So I'm going to take us to a new place
Yeah.
because I met you. I started doing Enneagram work with you. And then, quite on accident, I looked up your name and I went, is this the same Catherine Touhey? And sure enough, it was. So, this Enneagram work that you were doing on yourself revealed something else,
Yeah.
um, revealed something about your past that you're currently dealing with in the present. Do you mind taking us there?
Yeah. So, like I said, I was a D1 athlete and I swam at Cal. And my experience that I thought was going to be at Cal was not. And if you had asked me prior to 4 years ago about wow, you swam at Cal, like, wow, you swam D1, my answer would have been, yep. And I got injured and that ended my career. That's what I would have said. I wouldn't have talked about it. I would have ended the conversation as quickly as I could. If you wanted to hear about my swimming experience, I would talk about my experience in high school. Happy. But my experience at Cal, what I made sense of up until a couple years ago was I got injured and my body quit. And then during my Enneagram studies, it came out that my coach was abusive. And mind you, I was there in 2000, 2004. The language around abuse at that point was sexual and physical abuse. When in actuality, what I was experiencing was psychological and emotional abuse. And an investigative journalist wrote a large piece about my coach. And when I read the article, I began to see a different experience of how I had made sense of my experience at college. And I began to think maybe that wasn't a badge of honor that I endured that. Maybe that wasn't just being an elite athlete in a D1 program. And maybe actually what I was experiencing was abuse. And so I had to take a hard look in the mirror. I had to do a lot of inner work and and thankfully I had the Enneagram because the Enneagram was my roadmap to begin to understand my experience in a different way, understand that I wasn't a failure at the time. And I was in a system that was never going to work for me because the coach was abusive. And begin to understand that maybe I'm not as weak as I initially had been telling myself, that I was 18 in a really unfortunate situation. And so I began to do the work and I began to heal and I began to tell my story, which for 3 was really scary to tell my story that what I had worked up to didn't work and was damaging to me. And what I had labeled for so long as me being a failure, I had to rewrite that script. I didn't fail. I didn't fail. I had an abuse coach.
You were failed. The system failed.
The system failed me. The system failed me. And by me revealing that and telling that story, what I met with is how courageous I am to speak my truth, to finally speak my truth, which I had to unpack and learn and do a deep dive into what that truth meant. But to speak about what really happened to me there. And then take steps and actions to right the wrong.
And so we're not going to go into the details of all of this because
Yeah.
there is a case that is currently being litigated.
Right.
And so I want to respect that case and the sanctity of that case. So for anybody who's interested, you can look up Catherine Touhey's name and you can see a little bit about her online, as she had told me. Yeah, so you Googled me. I said, I sure did. But I find the fact that you were able to put aside, and many times, we do this, right? So taking this away from your specific situation, we rationalize the heck out of things that, our gut is telling us this isn't right. but our head just sort of takes over and we overthink things in a way that, and when I say we, I'm going to say me. I can overthink things in a way where I just rationalize the heck out of it and say, no, no, no. And this is okay. And
Yeah.
this is okay. So the work that you did in the Enneagram allowed you to have some level of definition and see where you had shown up and you were taking blame for yourself and you were rationalizing things for yourself. And so let's move into, what do you think it could do for people who have never done this work? Like what do you want to do now? What are your goals as far as you've really embraced this? We've had great conversations. You've worked through your own things that the Enneagram has revealed. And now you've chosen this as a path that you want to connect with people in the world. And if there's one thing I'm always about, it's about that interpersonal connection. And so this is at a new level. This is at depth. So what do you want to do with this moving forward, Katherine?
Yeah. So I think the one thing that I've loved about the Enneagram is I have such comfort in my own lived experience. And so that idea that I can really, so we talk about that iceberg, right? So you have the patterns of behavior on the top, and then you have all the underlying motivations and all the internal dialogue and the internal experience. And the problem is so many people either unconsciously or consciously filter what's coming from bottom up. And the beauty of the Enneagram is it blows all of that open. So there's no difference between what you're experiencing on the inside and how everyone else is experiencing you. So that idea of like anxiety and worry, yes, it still exists, but you're able to play with it and understand it and have grace and compassion for it at the same time. And so I always say, like, I'm so much more alive and so much more comfortable in my own skin. And in return, I see people for who they are, knowing that they are uniquely them. And it's an opportunity to learn from them because I know even if I'm talking to a 3, I have so much to learn and gain from their experience and our exchange. And so just walking through a world with that curiosity of like, I'm pretty confident in how I show up, but every interaction is an opportunity to learn because I know that person is coming with something different. And the cool thing is, if the other person knows their Enneagram type, then game on. Like, game on. The conversation's going to go real deep, and it's real deep real quick. And it's going to be a beautiful, magical thing. However, if you don't know their type, then the world is your playground. Because then you can begin to explore how they're showing up differently than you. And then once again, it's kind of like the Mel Robbins theory of let them, right? Like, let them be in their personality, let them do them, and then let me begin to be curious about how I'm responding to them. And the Enneagram gives you the language of exactly how you're responding to them. And then the beautiful thing is when you guys can do that dance together because you both know the Enneagram.
So when someone's in a flow state, when as an observer of you just sharing that last bit, you just know that you have found the thing that just makes you sing, because
Yeah.
when you were just talking, you were really singing. And it's just so lovely. I've been very fortunate to meet you, to do the work with you. Katherine is someone who obviously has this background in D1 sports. She knows what it means to be an elite athlete. One of the talks that we had was about you being able to connect with college coaches and
Yeah.
talk to them about, how the Enneagram could serve them in their leadership as a college coach, which I think is brilliant because then you have all of these student athletes who are also trying to figure themselves out. And they're not just trying to figure themselves out as an athlete, but they're trying to figure themselves out as who am I going to be if I'm not going to continue to be an athlete post college.
Yeah.
And, I think weren't you and I the one that talked about somebody who was a Duke lacrosse player had put their Duke lacrosse at the bottom of their resume? Was that you? Yeah. And I couldn't believe that it was like, what? We're going to put Duke lacrosse at the bottom of the resume? What about you being, in an elevated program and teamwork and time management? And what about all of that isn't going to translate into the business world? Why are we hiding that? So to be able to have someone like you come in, work with the coaches, work with the students, good work. It's
Yeah.
really, really good work.
So I look at it from like two different ways. Like one, it's the coach knowing how they're leading, like any good leader of an organization. What are they leaning into? What patterns are they implementing that the kids are being receptive of, right? Because here's the thing about the Enneagram, it brings the unconscious, the subconscious conscious. And so the coach needs to know what they're leading with. And then they also need to be respectful of the fact that the players on their team are also coming with something different. I talk about that dance, right? And if you're playing that dance well between leader and player, one, there's high level of trust there. And you're given this amazing opportunity because sport is a playground. You fail all the time. You fail all the time in sport. And so what better opportunity to understand how you're persevering, how you're being more resilient, how you're pivoting and adapting to then bring language to that. And the Enneagram brings the language to it to then be like, okay, I have these skills. I can own it. I'm living it. I'm being rewarded for it because my performance and the coach is telling me in real time. My teammates are surrounding me and also mirroring this back to me. But then the pivot of what does this mean after college? What does this mean in the workforce? What does this mean of this experience on the field? How do I translate it to something, like I said, my authentic true self? Yes, I'm on my authentic true self on the field, in the pool, on the tennis court, whatever it is. And I'm also that same person in a job interview, in the workforce, in my relationships.
I love it. There is such good work that's going on there. Katherine, I could talk to you about this forever, but I think we have given enough information for people to look a lot of stuff up, get online, start taking the Enneagram, contact you if they wanted to, which by the way, how can they contact you? What's the best way to contact you? Is there a website? Is there LinkedIn? Is there an email? How would you like to be contacted?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Katherine Touhey, and then my website is katherinetouhey.com, and you can reach out to me that way.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, with that, I just want to say thank you again for the time that you take with me personally, the time that you are taking with student athletes, with their coaches. You're also doing great work in the home. You have 3 lovely boys who have an outstanding mom, and you're going to be able to help them. They get a little bonus in this world because you're in their life, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you for listening to Turn Talks. To learn more about our robust mentoring platform, visit us at turnmentoring.com. Join us next time for more enlightening conversations.